This episode is not sponsored, but we encourage you to help support the small businesses, charities, and organisations that we mention. Hi everyone, welcome back to Our Circle. I'm Jess.
I'm Rhiannon.
And today we have got entering our circle an editor and radio and event producer at JazzFM and also a freelance artist, Claire Umney.
Hello.
Hi there. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Wow. For our visual listeners, Claire is surrounded by beautiful artwork, so enjoy that. It's gorgeous.
I want a bit OTT, I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely not. Show this off. Gosh, it looks stunning.
So, Claire, can you start off by telling us a bit more about your job and how you got into it? So how did you become a radio and event producer?
Well, I started when I started JazzFM full-time. I've been working there for it's coming up to 4 years, this summer.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And I interned on and off for a couple of years before that whilst I was at uni. So I think I realised fairly early on, it was when I was about 16, that I thought, let's see if I can give radio a go. You know, when you're at secondary school and like, what do you want to do? And you go through your GCSEs. And I really couldn't think about very much apart from the fact that I loved listening to the radio. Always been into music. And as my music taste was changing, my radio station taste started to change. And so it went from, it went from like Capital to Radio 1 to what was then XFM. And then I got into Six Music and I've just stayed with Six ever since. And so that's where the initial idea came from. I then went to uni to study radio production, which most people don't know you can study, and I didn't know you could study it either. There's a very small amount of courses in the UK where you can study radio. And that's what I went and did. I got an internship through an alumnus person. Is that the right word? Alumnus?
Yeah, that's handy, isn't it?
Yeah. So it is the kind of cliche of it. You do, having your contacts is really, really helpful and important, but also, grabbing the opportunity when it comes to you. So my first internship with Jazz was at Love Supreme Festival. They wanted someone to work the event and do the radio side, and those are like my two passions. And festivals as well.
What does that mean then? What does that mean, like working the event? Does that mean that you're working in a reporting kind of way on a radio, or what does that mean?
Well, in that sense, I mean actually event, because at that point JazzFM owned a stake of Love Supreme, so they were doing the broadcasting from the festival, but they were also running part of the event with the company who run it now. So I mainly did artist liaison that weekend. So I think I was like 18 or 19 at the time, going on a festival site and working. I had my lanyards and I had my crew wristbands, and to be fair, I still find that really, really exciting.
Yeah, of course.
Later, and that'll never leave me, I don't think, because it's like I love festival sites so much. But that was my first job there, and then I interned for a bit on and off whilst I was at uni. I kept asking to come back, and then I was really lucky that in my final year of uni, when I did my internship, on the last day of that internship, they said, well, when you finish your degree, do you want to come back and start full time? And so that's what I did.
I loved you.
It went very well. I feel very lucky.
Are you into jazz music?
I wasn't. My knowledge of jazz was very limited. What I now know is limited. Like, I think at the time I probably would have said, yeah, I know a bit about jazz music, because about like Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald and stuff. But when I was interning, one of my really wonderful friends, Tim, who worked at JazzFM then, he's a presenter now, I asked him for some albums to listen to, because I wanted to learn more and more, because, you're listening to the station every day, but the daytime output of JazzFM is quite different to like the specialist nighttime output and stuff. So I wanted to expand a little bit, and I couldn't listen to it. It was so chaotic in my brain. I can't, this is too much. And I found it really, really unsettling. Whereas now I listen to those same albums and I could have a nap. So it is just finding your ear with it. It sounds really snobby, and I hate to say it, but my experience was that you just have to kind of
unlock it almost.
Yeah, and just unlock it, find what you like. I do believe that there is a type of jazz for everyone, because it's so broad. It's like it's just like an umbrella term for loads of different stuff. So I've really loved learning about it and the people I've got to meet, and it has unlocked a load of different stuff for me in a world that I never would have imagined myself in at all.
Definitely. I think I've listened to Jazz FM quite a lot, and it was often in my kitchen. But I've noticed, like, throughout, say if I had Jazz FM on in the morning, it's completely different to Jazz FM in the evening. It's such a different vibe, and the different artists that you find through it, I found really, really cool and, you know, interesting. So I think it makes a lot of sense that you were saying how if you're taking in one album to suddenly be like, this doesn't make any sense or something, or this is too much, and then finding the right one for you. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely that kind of journey. There's still, don't get me wrong, there's still some stuff from like, this is a bit too much for me, or it have to be. I remember in a playlist meeting once, I said that, because we do it like, it's not just our head of music that decides the playlist, we kind of all of us sort of pitch in and suggest stuff. And there was one track where I was like, I feel like I'd need a jazz warm up before I get to this one. It was like, you need like a little taste of something, and then you get to the, you need something to easy with. So there's like morning jazz, afternoon jazz, evening jazz, late night jazz. There's all different kinds.
Amazing. So you said before that you've always been into music, but jazz wasn't your main one that you were into. What were you into before then?
Basically everything. The way I describe the music that I'm into is pretty much anything, but if it sounds to me like they need a hug, then I struggle. That's kind of, if it sounds really aggressive, then because I don't tend to listen to the lyrics. It's not the way my brain works. So it's how it sounds. Like if it's kind of, I think the Foster the People track that came out years and years ago that talks about there's a guy who's like running around a supermarket with a gun or something, but it sounds really, really merry and it sounds so summery. That's a really good example of what I mean. Like I'm not listening to the lyrics, I'm listening to
like the vibe of it.
Yeah. So if it's like, I don't know, like, so grime, for example, I appreciate it for what it is, but it's not very often that I find a grime track that really suits my mood and makes me feel like relaxed, like I want to be with music. Whereas like, but then again, then I really like punk and hip hop. So it's I don't know, it's such a mood thing. It's such a mood driven thing, but I will listen to quite a lot. I listen to a hell of a lot of pop music just because it's just nice. It's like a form of escapism. When before I started at JazzFM, it was a lot of indie stuff,
right?
A bit of electronic stuff, but it was a lot more chill.
I was going to say, because I've known you for a number of years. Obviously we went to the same school, and whenever I saw things that you were sort of posting online or stuff, you very much gave off an indie vibe. So when I found out that you're working for JazzFM, I thought, oh, this is interesting, this is a bit of a different turn here.
Yeah, a bit of a switch.
Yeah, definitely. So how come it was JazzFM? Was that just because it was the first sort of internship that you could get, or was it something that was actually on your mind, like to work for JazzFM? Like, were there other stations that you would have liked to work for?
I love the honesty.
It was because I was an intern. No, that's the thing with the radio industry, it's so small. So it's any gig you can get when you're starting out is what you go for. And so I was very lucky to fall in to this position where it's a very small company, because in my mind I always wanted to work for the BBC. I was like, the BBC, that's what I want, like Radio 1 or Six Music or something that was a lot bigger. I wanted to be in like a really big company. And then I started to go for JazzFM, and we were independent at the time, so it was us in our own little bubble in this basement that's very near Oxford Street, and it was just us. Whereas now, a couple of years ago, we got bought by a company called Bauer, who are the company that own Kiss, Absolute, Planet Rock, Magic, Kerrang, and all of these other stations.
Yeah.
And so now I belong to this huge company, and we're doing our thing within this, what can sometimes be quite a corporate kind of environment, which is such a different switch. And so I do like it. I do like it a lot. It suits me. Both ways suit me, but in terms of, I think, career, it's been great, because before I didn't really know that many people who did what I do, and especially women, because at the time when we were working for JazzFM, I was like the only woman in the production team. So to move over to Bauer and meet all of these other women who they were producing, and so to get to know them was really great. So to answer your question, no, wasn't always JazzFM. It's just kind of fallen into that way, and you make the best out of everything that
Can you sort of explain to our listeners then what your role actually like is, like what a typical day could look like for you, or a week if you like?
So as a producer, I do a variety of things. I have certain presenters who I look after across the week. Some of those are I'm working on shows with them and building and suggesting music and arranging interviews, sometimes doing interviews if they can't do them, and actually not physically, or building the show on the computer, on the laptop, and getting it all set for broadcast. So there are some programs and some presenters where I do like a lot. Then other presenters on JazzFM, very self-sufficient. They know exactly what they're doing, and all I need to do is make sure a few boxes are ticked and make sure it all looks okay in our playout system before it goes out. And that's cool. So that's like the main sort of production side of like our weekly schedule. And then for the more events side of things, which I started doing when I was an intern, but then I started to get more and more involved with the JazzFM Awards, and I became the event manager for that. And then now I'm the producer. And so the manager, you're looking after every bit of the event, like all the logistics, you're managing all the different teams and making sure that it's going to run smoothly and you have a backup for everything, and everything is planned and everything's going to be good, basically. Whereas the producer, now it's the more creative decisions, like what the show looks like, what people see like on socials, and just how everything looks and sounds and how it all kind of weaves together. That's the event side of things. Is there anything else?
You're busy.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how
accomplished
are you as well? Like, you're so young, and the fact that you're managing all these things, you're leading all of these things, and sort of taking charge on stuff that sounds like hasn't really been done in that area yet. So this is incredible. And you're a woman. Yes.
Yes, we like that. I think. Thank you. I think that is one of the reasons why I was really grateful that I ended up starting out within an independent company, because you don't have to just stay in your lane of what your role is. You can talk to different people. You can start to go, oh, can I help out with that, or can I sit in on that? And so it means you get to learn a lot more quickly, I think, from my experience anyway. And you just, I feel like there's a bit more speed to it.
You said that it's such a small industry, but at the same time, I'm assuming there's probably a lot of people, because obviously, people enjoy radio. Is it competitive to get into, like, to find roles like yours, or just in the radio industry itself? Is it competitive?
Massively. Really competitive. And especially when there are certain things like, especially in the commercial side of things as well.
This is probably a little bit of a cheeky question, actually, but is there a lot of money involved, like in radio, like as a employee? Like, is it something that you can put a lot of money on? No.
I mean, there's a long running joke, which is, what is it? How to make £1 million pounds through a radio station. You start with 2 or something like that, and so basically you're just going to lose money. But it depends. Like, when the BBC like release their figures about how much people are paid, like, of course you have all the presenters, like, your Greg Jameses and all those kind of things. They're the people that are going to be on the higher salaries, and I don't know how it works in the BBC. I've only ever worked in commercial, but it's not the greatest paid job you will ever get, but you kind of have to weigh it up. Like,
it should be for the amount that you're doing. It sounds like a lot.
Like, without respecting presenters, do they do more or less than what you do? If you're allowed to answer that.
Well, it's completely, like, I couldn't do what they do. It's such a skill. Okay. When you see a presenter in the studio doing, particularly for me, live radio scares me. And everything I do is pre-recorded, and if I ever have to do anything live, which is very rarely, I just, oh god, I freak out.
I had to.
My heart would go.
I had to study it at uni, so I did a media arts degree. So we covered all of like production, whether it was radio, TV, everything, and radio and Well, ironically, we did podcasts and it didn't appeal to me at the time, but obviously
Here we are
now, yeah. But I mean, we're in control of this. Whereas, like you said, radio and live TV, I sucked at. I just didn't. It's hard. It's really hard, especially when you're like meant to speak something like 3 words a second or something, but not any more or any less. I was like,
I didn't know that was a rule. That's good. I've learned something.
Is it like slightly delayed? Radio, is it like delayed by like 10 seconds or something, just in case something's said, or
I need to beep?
Yeah,
not for us, no.
Okay.
No, I mean, it will be delayed in the sense that by the time you've said it, it's gonna, by the time someone actually hears it, it's gonna be delayed. Right. But it's not like an intentional delay. Yeah, it's not like telly with that, or ours isn't anyway.
Yeah.
So do you have a particular demographic at Jazz FM? Is it a slightly, I don't know, in my head for some reason I thought maybe a slightly older audience, or is it a real mix?
I think our age range is really quite large. It's like 25 up to people in their 60s, I think, and 70s. I know that we're male dominant. That I know. I think it's just skewed. I think it's near 50-50, but we are a bit more male dominant. And I think that's the thing, like when people think of jazz as well, especially in this country, or when certain people think of jazz, they will think as like a kind of like old man thing. That is a preconception.
Jazz or something.
Yeah. Whereas what I'm learning and what I've loved to learn, especially in the last few years, is how it's just not true. It's just not true. I mean, there is a truth to it. There is a historic truth to it, that it was mainly like older white guys who were going to see jazz gigs and whatever. But the roots of jazz and the history of jazz and the genre itself,
it's not that.
No, it's definitely not that.
Not all white men.
No, it's black music. That's what it is. That's where the heritage is. That's where the history is. And that is something that hasn't it's flipped somewhere and it's kind of stayed that way. But then what's happening in my time at JazzFM, I came in at a very exciting time where the scene was starting to change a little bit, especially in London. This younger crowd were coming through and they're doing all this amazing stuff, and that's more genreless. They don't care about genre as much, and all of these different stuff is coming on. And then a couple of years ago, we started to see all these younger jazz artists who were coming up on festival lineups, and there were more and more of them who were starting to play festivals across the summer. And then you had bands like Ezra Collective, who were on the West Holt stage at Glastonbury, the last Glastonbury, when it was really, really hot. I say that like I was there. I wasn't. I watched on the telly. But I think you had Swindle, and then you had Ezra Collective. And these are artists that are including they're either including jazz or like Afrobeat, but then they're starting to add a bit of grime or disco and stuff like that. So it's so exciting, and it's rooted in the heritage, but they're forming it and they're mixing it with all of this exciting stuff, which is more popular culture.
Right.
So it's such a mix of what's going on. It's personal. It's a very personal music, and you can feel the energy of people, especially when jazz vocalists. I think people probably know a little bit more about, well, I did anyway, but it's when you see an instrumentalist truly in their element, my God, it's just incredible.
It's so moving, I think. Yeah, definitely. I've loved jazz music for my whole life. But as you said, like when you get older, you start to learn about more subgenres inside it, and it's just incredible, some of the people that you get, and just the whole talent, the musicianship behind everything. I just think it's incredible, and I'm glad to know that it is leveling out in the gender, I guess, and I like that it's sort of spreading a bit more in age too, because I think it is something that everyone can, like you said, it's personal. Everyone can find something that they like in jazz, in my opinion anyway. So I wanted to touch actually on something that you'd sort of said, sort of rooting back to things to do with how jazz originates from Black people, and forgive me if I'm getting this completely wrong, but I've seen on your Instagram that you have a section on your highlights called JazzFM Voices, and from what I had seen, a lot of it was related to Black artists. I just ask about that project that you're leading?
Yeah, for sure. So JazzFM Voices is a fairly new venture for us. It's something that we created around 9 months ago. So around the time last year when George Floyd was murdered and the marches were happening across the world, it was something that made me and also the station or a lot of our station look at what we were doing and what we weren't doing, and how we could be more representative of our history our history, the people whose music we play, and how we could do better. Basically, I think lots of people were asking themselves that question around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a lot of conversations. I had lots of conversations with my boss and my team about how we were feeling and what we recognized in our own behavior and our platform, basically, because we've got this national platform. So what can we do to use it, essentially, is what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of presenters who are incredibly passionate and they're very outspoken, and I love them for that because it moves us forward. And so back in end of summer last year, we decided to create this thing called JazzFM Voices, which has now basically turned into a platform that is mainly a 1 hour radio show every week, but also a monthly mix and article online. My goal is just to get as many new people on JazzFM as possible and be representative in terms of story, race, community, gender, as representative as I can be through our broadcasts and through our content, all focusing on either identity, community, and education is a really important thing as well. So actually just touching on what you said about the how jazz is maybe starting to have a little bit more gender balance. In some ways that's true, but we actually did a program a few weeks ago now around International Women's Day called Women in Music.
Mm-hmm. And
we highlighted actually just how unbalanced it actually is, and the way that women are still, the news of the last couple of weeks, like it's a topic at the moment for sure, and we just so happen to be releasing this at that time, and we spoke about how there's still a lot of women are still experiencing, they feel like they're not progressing in their jobs because they're women. They feel like they're being, undermined or mistreated because they're women, or in some cases sexual harassment as well, and it's still happening. And we had some really wonderful women who came onto the program and talked about all of their experiences and what they hope to happen and how we'd like to proceed. And there's so many incredible women who are doing different jobs, all different kinds of jobs across the industry. And we were just talking about how we look forward to the day where we have more power because we genuinely feel like it will help. It's like everything. I think it's the same thing that people talk about when it comes to equality in terms of race as well. Like, when one of us rises, we all rise, and so that's just what we're talking about. And it's definitely quite a liberal platform, I guess, and it's very much a lot of me is in there, but I'm getting to work with so many new different people with wonderful views, beautiful music taste. My goodness, I've learned even more about music in the last 9 months as well, and it's something that I'm really happy to continue with for the rest of the year. We've got some exciting stuff coming up.
What a fantastic project, like to lead. How can people listen to this?
It's on every Saturday night, 9 till 10 on JazzFM, or it's available on Catch Up forever. Go to JazzFM website. There's a little JazzFM Voices button at the top of the website, and there's a hub on there which has everything. Can't
wait! I'm going to binge listening to these.
I'll send you some links for stuff that I think you'll like.
Thank you very much.
You may like all of it, but
I probably will.
So Claire, how has your job changed in the past year? Obviously everyone's had quite a difficult year, but how has yours in particular changed?
Well, I haven't been in the studio for a year now. That's a big thing. So a lot of our content was pre-recorded anyways, but we were able to pretty quickly, as a whole company, actually, we very quickly were able to switch to working from home, and there were a lot of teething issues and stuff, but we did get there. And you wouldn't unless you were listening to a presenter tell you, oh, I'm recording under my duvet, no, because that's how to get, like, honestly, put a thick blanket over you or your duvet. That's how loads of presenters were presenting for the first part of lockdown before they were able to get, like, either,
how hot would they have been?
It's so hot, so hot. You don't even know. Like, and I had to do it to a presenter who was for JazzFM Voices a couple of weeks ago. There was a presenter who, because they change every week, so I'm working with different people who aren't regular presenters on JazzFM, and so we're doing, like, different tech testings each week, and I was like, I need you to find, like, a thicker blanket or something, and she was like, all I've got is a coat. So she recorded the whole show like this under a coat, and it was
doing our podcast under our duvet.
Honestly, I'm currently surrounded by loads of pillows because I was like, I need to figure out how to soundproof a little bit more, because I'm in quite an empty room. So we had to switch to recording everything from home, and it was because we have the people behind the scenes of even what we do to get the tech to a position where we could do that. And it was a big job. Yeah. But luckily, you know, I work with so many musicians, so they've got mic setups at home, and that's been a much easier thing. But definitely quality in some cases has been a little bit less than we would have liked if we were working in the studio.
Do you think that the studio is necessary then so much? Like, if you found that you're able to function without it, is that something that you feel like you don't need so heavily to rely on? Or is it like, no, we're ready to be back in the studio?
Personally, I'm cool without a studio. It completely depends. There are some programs which need them, more complex programs, like, for example, like a breakfast show where they've got multiple presenters, they've got newsreaders, they have guests coming in and out, they'll have a producer and maybe another producer and, like, a research team or whatever. Those are the programs that rely more heavily on a studio setup.
Right.
So that is quite important for me, whereas most of my programs are pre-recorded. All of my presenters have home setups where they can sit with a mic like this and just record, and it sounds completely fine. That is when it's not as needed. So actually we are not going to go back to working in the office the same way that we did before lockdown. So most of us are going to be working from home. I'm definitely going to be working from home for the foreseeable, and I'll go to a studio when I really, really need it.
Well, that's quite handy, I think. And I think that's quite smart, I think, for a lot of companies as well who are experiencing that, when they're recognizing they don't need to send their employees in and make them travel. You know, they can save money, can't they? And you can save money, I suppose, with studio time. So I think that's very positive. What about in your, if you don't mind asking your personal life, how have you found the pandemic?
For the most part, all right. It's been all right. I think I've been incredibly fortunate that I still live at home with my mum and dad. So I had the space. Right. I don't have, rent contracts and everything that I had to rely on. And so very early on in the pandemic, a load of people from my company got furloughed. And so they asked for volunteers. And I was like, you know what, I'm in the position where I probably could. So I was on furlough for 2.5 months at the start of the lockdown. And that's when all of this started to happen. So I feel very fortunate that I was presented with that opportunity. Basically, I got like a taste of retirement at 24. So it was, and it did. It also did help. It helped with my mental health, and it helped with my job, because my creativity was able to get better. But mental health was a massive struggle. I think, just the being quite secluded, and it's the same with everyone. It's not, the way that we have been living isn't natural. It's not natural to not see people. It's not natural to be at home all the time. And I think so. I've struggled with depression and anxiety since I was about 13. So it's been a really big chunk of my life. Right. And to then basically have the excuse to not go out, that was the hard thing, because
right, okay,
you're basically saying to yourself, oh no, but I don't need to go out because no one is. So you're not pushing yourself to like go for that walk or pop to the shops, right. And you're getting more takeaways or like all of this kind of stuff. So the healthy living was harder, and obviously that's something that really contributes to poor mental health if you're not looking after yourself and stuff. that's really hard to maintain. So in that respect, it's been quite tricky. There have been some very, very low moments over the winter, particularly, but now the sun's coming back. That's a wonderful thing, and that's going to help massively, for sure.
So Claire, I wanted to say that I was a bit surprised when you said that you were quite happy to be at home and that you'll be working from home for the foreseeable, because you were saying sort of that it was unnatural for us to all be isolated, and I wondered whether, you know, you sort of relied on that social interaction at work and whether that was something you really enjoyed and sort of thrived off. So is that something you think you might have like got used to now, or sort of built almost like more resilience to, or do you still find that you're getting that social interaction being at home?
I think it's just a balance, isn't it? Like, I didn't realise how much it was taking out of me commuting into London every day. So I must have been travelling 2.5 hours a day, I think, to get into my office, which is in central London. Obviously doing rush hour on the trains and the tube and stuff. And to then go into an office which is very full of people, lots of really big personalities, and was quite demanding in a lot of ways. And even though being at home also has its struggles when it comes to, you know, you're not seeing as many people, there aren't the hugs. We had a lot of hugs in that office. We were a very huggy bunch, and it was really lovely. But it was a lot. There were some days where I just really, really didn't want to go into work. I didn't want to go into the office. There were a lot of tears at the office. There were some panic attacks at the office. There were a lot of things, and how it was wonderful in so many ways. And it's not a reflection on the people that I work with, because I love them very, very dearly. But it's an intense environment. It's a very intense environment. So when I started to have that time back in the mornings and the evenings where I wasn't commuting, I wasn't traveling,
makes a difference.
That started to help. That was a real game changer. And then I was able to start, you know, taking a few more walks or spending more time in the garden with my mum, or, you know, or painting. Like, so then it started to balance out a lot better. So even though I wouldn't be happy to carry on working from home in a lockdown situation, but when the world has started to open up again, and you're able to then go and, you know, see your friends, and you can go and get that social interaction when you need it, that for me will be a lot better.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably feel the same way, that working from home is fine when lockdown isn't present. But talking about some of the things that have come out of lockdown is your incredible painting. I had no idea that this started from lockdown. I wanted to ask, have you always been creative, like with art? Did you do this previously, or is it something that you literally have just learned?
The last time I did art pretty continuously was at our school when I did GCSE. That was basically it. I've always been creative. I've always loved to paint, but it was never a practice. So my granny, she painted, and she was beautiful. She did lots of oil paintings and portraiture, which I cannot do. It's not something that has been passed down. And my mum can paint. She doesn't practice, but she can do it. So this just gave me the time to practice and find the real release that I get from it. So that was a good contributor to mental health as
Definitely. Well. But what did you just, one day you're like, I'm going to paint today? Is that literally what happened? Or like, because things that you've been creating are just absolutely stunning. They're a real mix for anyone who isn't watching on the YouTube thing, they're just listening audibly. The paintings that Claire does is very vibrant colors, quite a lot of abstract art as well. But like I'm just looking at it like, I absolutely love it. I'm such a fan of your artwork. I love it. And how do you even sorry, I'm getting carried away. But some of the things that, as well, that you post on your Instagram or on Facebook or whatever, as well as time lapse videos. I don't even know how to do that when I'm painting, because I'm like, oh, that's too many elements. Like it's enough to like be painted. How on earth do you do this? Sorry, that's a lot of questions, but
I'll go back to the first one.
Yeah, thank you.
When did it start? I think it was just, I'm going to paint. I think it was around the time. So Noel Fielding did Noel's Art Club in the first lockdown.
Okay.
And we started to, I think I'd done a few days before that point, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. This is nice. I like this. And then Noel started his art club, and then a few of us started to come onto Zoom every week. And we didn't even really talk that much. It was a COVID-free zone. I didn't want to talk about COVID. So I was like, guys, we're not going to talk about COVID. We're just going to sit down and paint and just ask how each other are and just have a bit of a laugh, or not talk at all. We just sit down and create, and in whatever you have available. Like not everyone has as many paints and stuff as I have around, so sometimes it was just pencils and paper. But we started to do that every week. So every Saturday afternoon, we were sitting down with a new theme that Noel Fielding gave us, and we would create some stuff. Yeah, it was really, really lovely. I think the most people we had one week was I think we had about 13 of us or 14 of us all on Zoom, just doing all to this one theme, and that was really, really lovely. And it became part of my routine when I was on furlough. Every morning I would go out for a walk, and I'd come back and I'd paint in the afternoon, because the weather was really lovely in that first lockdown, wasn't it? So I'd just paint in the garden. So
what's your inspiration? Like, do you have like a certain theme of things that you paint, and do you listen to music while you paint as well?
Yes, I do. Music has a big influence. So it also depends what mood I'm in. It massively depends. Sometimes I paint because I need to get something out, and it's a good way for me to just sit down, not talk to anyone, block out the world, and just get some kind of release. On other days, I let's have the radio on, or an album that I wanted to listen to, and it just kind of comes into it. Or there's a piece that I did, which I haven't posted yet because it's been confidential up until in a couple of weeks it's going to be released. But an artist, a musician, approached me who I'd met once previously to lockdown, and he said, my new single's coming out, and I was wondering if you could paint your interpretation of it. So he sent me his track, and I listened to it on a loop for about 5 hours, and I painted this piece, which will be released very soon. It's going to be the single of his art, the artwork for his single as well.
That's so exciting!
Congratulations!
Thank you. It was a really wonderful project, and it's what freed up the way more vibrant, abstract stuff.
Okay,
that came from that painting, because it freed up my brain in another way that I hadn't done that before. So there are a few things that I've done across the last year that have pushed me in terms of creativity, and have just sort of changed the way that you think.
Definitely developed, and I don't mean that as in she's got much better now. I don't mean
evolved.
It's changed, because the stuff that I remember you originally posting were like plants, like leaves and things like that, and it was beautiful pieces, but they weren't abstract at all. In my opinion, they were what they were, and it was great. And then you started doing a little bit more almost like Picasso sort of stuff, or a bit more, like abstract. And I was like, oh, okay, where's this going? And then the piece that's behind you is one of my favorite things. The one on that one. This one. I love this because it's so abstract, but when you look at the close-up of it, if you look on Claire's Instagram, it's just stunning. All of the little brush strokes and everything. I just think it's beautiful. I absolutely love it.
There's a bit of brush. I've just noticed there's a bit of brush in it. There you go. You don't have brush strokes. You've got the actual material.
Claire, were you nervous? Sorry, going back to the artwork that you've done for this artist, were you nervous to show what your interpretation was to the artist?
Yes.
I thought this was.
Yes, I really was, and especially because the concept of the album, he started the album because his wife miscarried. It's a very, very personal project, and it's also his first jazz venture. So he's been an electronic producer before, and this is his sort of like debut within this kind of world. And so there are a lot of different elements. I was like, please like it. It was like, please like it, because it's unlike anything I'd ever done, and it was very moody as well. It's not vibrant like the other ones that I've done. It's very moody because it's based on Ronnie Scotts, and I don't know if either of you have ever been to Ronnie Scotts, but it's a deep red. The venue is a deep red.
I mean, by the time this episode comes out, your work should be released. So you feel free to talk about what it looks like, because by the time this episode comes out, I'm sure that the album or the single will be out.
It probably will be. Well, it's fine. I'll talk about it anyway. So the piece has this these deep reds. It's very, very moody, and it's actually based on a live experience, not that I've seen, but the one I was imagining in my head whilst I was listening to the track over and over and over again. Because it's like a 3.5 minute track, and I listened to it for about 5 or 6 hours. So it was many, 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 many times. And each time I would tune in to the different instruments that were there. So, it might be the horns or the drums or the keys, or Miguel on the guitar. And the piece, it has the central point of light, which I imagined was the stage. And then from there, you have all of the different musical energies coming out of it, kind of like a big beam of light. And there are all these different patterns and colours coming out of it. And I imagine that was the live experience filling Ronnie Scotts as a venue.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you. I'll give you a sneak preview.
Thank you very much. We're very honoured. But how did they react then when they saw it?
Oh, he loved it. He really loved it, and he's very sweet, and he's told me quite a few times since then that he loves it as well. And we've been working together. He did a program for JazzFM Voices a couple of weeks ago, and so you can go check that out. It's JazzFM Voices Global Connection with Miguel Music. And I got to then get to know him. He got to know me through my painting, and then I then got to know him through his music taste. So it's been a really lovely creative relationship. And we've met 2 times and maybe 5 minutes max across those 2 times.
Good connection.
So we really got to know each other, and we're both very open in terms of like how we're feeling creatively and stuff as well. So that's been really important.
Definitely. I wanted to ask, what type of medium do you work in? Because I wasn't actually sure. Is it acrylic? Is it oil? What's your preference?
I started off, so at the very beginning of lockdown, I started with this new set of paints called gouache paints. It's it's a really hard word to say, and I'm not entirely, it's either gouache or gouache. I think it's gouache. And it's spelled GOUACHE. I don't know. It's one of those. I put it on it. I spell it on my Instagram somewhere. So it started with that, and that's a very different type of paint that allows you to. It's like a mix. It's like an in-between between watercolor and acrylic. It's like an acrylic here you can water down, but it doesn't lose any of its vibrancy.
Oh, wow.
And I'd asked for this new set of paints, which I'd got for the Christmas before from my auntie, because I'd seen this artist on Instagram painting these beautiful, beautiful plants with this type of paint. I was like, well, I want to try that. And I fell in love with it. And that's actually what started all of the painting again. And then I went to revisit acrylics. And that's the abstract stuff is done in acrylics because I use a lot more paint, and gouache is actually more expensive, and it goes quite far on a canvas. It doesn't work, it doesn't layer as well like acrylic. You can just go over it and it's fine. Gouache, you can't do that. So the abstract stuff is more in acrylic, and then the more illustrative commercial stuff that is done in gouache.
Amazing. That's so cool. Oh, I've loved hearing about this. I just wanted to sort of end our final question of asking you what we ask all of our guests, which is what makes up your circle? Because I feel like you're made up of so many different elements. So what makes up your circle?
Lots of different creative, open people, and music, and that all flows together. It's this beautiful kind of mix in the middle. But I'm very, very fortunate to have found some really, really wonderful people who truly do inspire me. And they just, when you find people that just let you be yourself and embrace it, that's when the good stuff comes. And I think that's what my circle is. There you go.
I love that.
That's a lovely answer. Yeah.
So we like to dedicate every episode to a small business, a charity, or an organization. And as you are our guest today, we've asked who you'd like to support. So could you tell us about that, please?
I would like to support / dedicate / say go check them out. This organization called Casa Planta. So they are an East London based sustainable houseplant store, and they are run by the most gorgeous woman called Maisie Brown, and she knows so much about plants. Any questions I have about plants, and I have a fair few, to be fair, and a lot of people come to me to ask questions about plants, and I always go to her every single time because she knows everything. And they only deliver to people in London at the moment, but they have the occasional time where they go, oh, we're going outside London, anyone want plants? And they do really quick delivery. They're really reasonably priced, and they come with all the tips. And
Amazing.
they're just, it's Maisie, and then her partner Bruna, and I think her mum Sally also helps out as well. And they do wonderful things. They also sell some artwork, and some of my artwork is going to be on sale. Going to get some prints from Casa Planta very, very soon.
How exciting!
So, yeah, so all the plant stuff I've done very recently, that is for Casa Planta, and will be available prints quite soon.
Amazing. Well, we'd love to support them. So if everyone can go and check out the links, which will be in our description and on our Instagram, that would be amazing. Please go and follow Claire so that you can find out everything about her art, her amazing art, and her JazzFM career with the segment on JazzFM Voices. Definitely encourage everyone to go and check that out. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. We've absolutely loved having you on here.
It's been wonderful. It's a lovely lunchtime treat.
Oh, good. So if everyone can please go and check out Claire, and also check out our social medias. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channels. Make sure to stream us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Bye.